With a talk called Black Middle Class, please welcome Aquanza Cadogan.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? It's an absolute pleasure being in front of you guys today. For those of you who don't know who I am, again, my name is Aquanza Cadogan. I am an author, a mentor, a public speaker, but the one thing I'm most passionate about is being an activist. And what I hope to give you guys from my talk today is just a perspective on not only what can unify us, but I want to show us that there's a lot to learn from what has divided us over the years. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. It's called Black Middle Class. I knew I was different at an early age. I mean, I wasn't different, but I was different. Many of the kids in the neighborhood I grew up with had never left the city. Yet, I had my first passport at the age of 8. My parents had taken me to places like England and throughout the Caribbean before my 13th birthday. In my home, we had a personal computer, way before the cyber boom. It was the kind of computer that had that loud, annoying modem sound that stopped your phone line from receiving calls. Hell, we even had a monthly subscription to America Online. But it was in that moment I realized that I was part of an evolving subculture called the Black Middle Class. Now, the term has been around since the 60s, but this fraction of Black America came with its own challenges, problems, and responsibilities. Now, before I get into this, I want you guys to know that I am no stranger to struggle. I did 4.5 years hard time at college, so I am very accustomed to a ramen noodle budget. I know what it's like to wait for that financial aid money to come in, so I'm no stranger. Nor do I claim to know the ins and outs of the social class system of these United States of America. But what I do know is that my parents worked hard as hell to make my sister and I be in the best possible situation. They spared no expense to make sure that we stayed a step ahead instead of a step behind. It's a work ethic that has stuck with me till this very day. And then we moved to our house in South Orlando. It was then that I realized my friends came in all colors and cultures. My parents worked hard to rise us into the middle class of America, the professionals, the business class. A world that exposed me to different values and aspirations. It was then that I started to identify with things that weren't considered cultural, like bowling. I'm a savage at bowling, by the way. I enjoyed bowling over basketball. I enjoyed jazz music over top 20. And as I progressed in school, I quickly became the only person that looked like me. It wasn't until I got to college that I started to identify with this identity crisis I was experiencing. It was in the publication called The Souls of Black Folk, written by the great W.E.B. Du Bois. It simply stated, whether for protection or survival, the underclass had to identify with multiple personalities, making it impossible to identify with only one. Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air. When I first heard Will Smith spit those bars at the beginning of that show, I immediately knew that those words, Bel Air, stood for immense wealth. Wealth that was passed on generationally. It was a lifestyle that my generation was constantly chasing. The truth was, only 33% of the world qualified in this class system. The truth was, it's lonely at the top. According to Forbes, some of the most notable African Americans in the United States aren't even in the arena of wealth as the global elite. I mean, Oprah? Oprah. She has her own television show, weight loss program, magazine, cult following. Oprah? Michael Jordan, the GOAT, Mr. Free Throw Line, Mr. Retro, 1.65 billion, seriously? And for those of you who are curious who Aliko Dangote is, he is the CEO of Dangote Cement, the largest cement distributor in the continent of Africa. Out of 2,043 billionaires in the world in 2017, only 10 are African American. It's a narrative that I know too well. It's written in all the history books. A class of people living paycheck to paycheck, reliant on the government, the underclass. At the highest percent, 27.4 of people that classified in this class look like me. It was a narrative I could never escape. It's a narrative I could never hide from. We may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated. That in fact, it may be necessary for us to experience defeat so that we can know who the hell we are, what we can overcome, what makes us rise and go on. Maya Angelou. When I first heard that speech, I knew I had a responsibility. I had a responsibility to tell the story of who I am and what I am, regardless of the social class that I was in. My ancestors stood arm in arm, hosed by oppression, for me to have the opportunity for me to stand here tonight. Their courage gave me the right to vote and a chance for me to attend one of the most prestigious universities in the state. We don't have to let the narrative define us. We can not let our past be the entire book. It can only be a chapter.
Tonight, I'm asking for the vote of every single African American citizen in this country who wants to see a better future. Look how much African American communities have suffered under Democratic control. To those I say the following: what do you have to lose by trying something new like Trump? What do you have to lose? I say it again, what do you have to lose? Look, what do you have to lose? You're living in poverty, your schools are no good, you have no jobs, 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose?
WTF. (1961). It's important that you see the faces of the Freedom Riders. These are the faces of the people that rode interstate buses into the segregated South to stand up for oppression. It wasn't just black people. It wasn't just brown people. It wasn't the poor or the oppressed. It was people of all colors standing up for injustice, standing up for decency and common sense, no matter the cost. We all have a responsibility. Each and every one of us. It's gonna take a village. It's gonna take all of us. My kids, they sometimes ask me why I hold my fist up like this. And I tell them, fingers alone are vulnerable. One race can be bent. One social class can be sprained. One person standing alone can be broken. But together we can strike a mighty blow to injustice. Let's start listening with the intent to change. Let's run to the aid of someone who's fallen instead of taking out our phones and recording it. Let's stop talking about our differences and start talking about our similarities. Let's put aside our faults and start showing our young people a different side. I am the new black middle class. It can no longer be about income and investments, about stocks and savings. I knew at an early age that I was different. I mean, I wasn't different, but I was different. Funny thing is, looking out at all of you, I think there's a lot of similarities in our difference. Thank you. My name is Aquanza Cadogan.